All right. Welcome everybody to episode 22 of the Navigating Now Roundtable series. This is our weekly virtual roundtable, and we are extremely excited to have a regular on the show today. Hopefully you all can see Mr. Tim Jones is with us again today. He is a regular here. He's a big part of the Thought Team community. Tim is also just an incredible force and energy here in the Chicago area and beyond. He's a speaker, he's an author, he's the founder of the Leave No Potential on the Table movement. He's also just a great organizer of community. So Tim Jones, welcome back to the virtual roundtable. Thank you so much for joining.
Happy to be here, man. Thank you, Anthony, for the invite.
Wonderful. I want to welcome everybody who's joined us via Zoom. You have the opportunity to ask Tim questions throughout. Hopefully you'll be getting a ton of nuggets. Tim is a leadership, he's a walking leadership quote, but he not only serves the quotes, he backs it up with his own demonstration of leadership. So hopefully you learn a lot today. We love the questions though. As the questions come in, we'll try to pause and ask Tim throughout. We are also streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, particularly for those folks who see us on the LinkedIn feed and stop and listen. We would love for you to say hello in the chat box. Let us know that you're checking in. And if you've got any questions, we'll be monitoring the comments box on LinkedIn. So we want to welcome our entire LinkedIn community. And without further ado, I want to dive right into the conversation. I can't believe, again, this is episode 22. So we started Navigating Now 22 weeks ago at the doorstep of the pandemic. And the goal for Navigating Now was to bring the most relevant and most current leadership topics to the table, to bring those folks who not only have a perspective, but are demonstrating leadership in the face of great change, those folks who are showing resilience, the ability to navigate and pivot. And in Tim's case, those folks who have the ability to bring other people into the leadership journey. And he does that in a few, I think, very entrepreneurial ways. And so the topic today that we're going to unpack with Tim is the concept of entrepreneurial leadership. We're going to talk about consistency. We're going to talk about how the leadership model has changed over the years and even over the last 6 months. And most importantly, we're going to talk about leadership in practice today with Tim. So again, Tim, welcome. And as everybody else is joining us via Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and those of you who joined via Zoom, we really appreciate you all participating. The chat box is open, so if you've got any questions for Tim throughout, please drop them in the chat box. Tim, I want to start with something that you posted the other day that, I always stop and read your posts. They are a consistent reminder of the gentle nudges that we need as leaders and as humans every day. And in your case, your message always has this thread of stay the course. So I'm going to read this post because I stopped and I exhaled a little bit when I read it, as I do most of your quotes. My dreams are too big for same-day delivery. My dreams are too big for overnight delivery. My dreams are too big for rush delivery. A little peace of mind for your journey. This is one of a handful of messages that we get from Tim, his community, we get from Tim, that remind us to stay the course. And Tim, I don't want to explain that because it had a bit of an impact on me. I'd love for you to help us understand that post particularly.
Yeah, so every day I challenge my brain to think. And I challenge it by, looking for something motivational and inspirational to share with the people on this journey with me, whether they're my social media friends, whether they're family, no matter what. But these type of messages, they just serve as reminders. And this one in particular just serves as a reminder that, special orders take a while to come to the table, right? You can't ask for something off the menu and expect for it to come up as quickly as something that's, a staple on the menu. And that's what I hope my messages provide is that reminder, that reassurance, again, some peace of mind for every dreamer to be patient, to be positive, and to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it's like to wait on something that I desire. And I know what it's like to allow that WAIT to turn into a WEIGHT. And so if you're not getting these reminders, that's what happens to you, man. That wait turns into the wait, and you start getting mad at people like Thoughtium for having a webinar every Thursday at 3. Right? And you just started
Yes.
feeling this way, and it turns into this wait.
There's so much to unpack there. And again, I appreciate you taking us through it. Before I get into that though, there's something about the language that you use where you ask us to remain consistent, but you do it in almost a repetitive way. So when you say, my dreams are too big for same day delivery, they're also too big for overnight delivery, they're also too big for rush delivery. Is there something about just that repetition that allows your messaging to be real effective? It's like people need to hear it over and over and over.
Yeah, so I know a little bit about your mom. So I know she's a good mom, and my mom is a good mom. And whenever she used to throw that window up and yell out,
I know where you're going.
She did it like 3 times. And when I heard it the first time, it was like, okay, let's keep going, y'all. Second time, it was like, let me pause and consider who is calling me. Third time, I knew that this was a message that I needed to figure out and get my way to. And that's what I try to do. I try to change speeds. It's like Clayton Kershaw, right? And that's what I try to do with my messaging, is to mix it up so that transfer can take place. And that's what I try to do. I honestly, intentionally try to change my message up to try to reach people at every level.
Yep. It's funny you refer to, our moms calling us when we're out to play. If she went 3 times and you didn't answer, she started using middle names.
Oh yeah.
And if she started using middle names, it was over. So that meant she was on her way to you. That you didn't have to go anywhere. She was on her way to you.
It's just a reminder. It's a gentle reminder to pay attention.
Yeah.
To be alert.
Yeah, I love that. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, something you touched on, the difference between the WEIGHT that is sometimes felt, and not just as entrepreneurs, not just as leaders, but as humans. And you used an example of that weight sometimes being seeing other people do well.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, that's what happens when you. So humanity is, we're all waiting. WAIT, right? Nobody is advancing goal all the time. Nobody is crushing it, hitting it hard all the time. And so that's just that's a part of the game, is to be able to wait and wait well. But when you allow it to become a WEIGHT, you start to shade, you start to hate, you start to say, why not me? You start to look outside of your lane into somebody else's lane that has nothing to do with your journey, right? It's like being upset. It's just like looking at someone else's itinerary and wondering why you're not at your destination. That's a totally separate destination. Yep. And that's what happens, is we begin to take it personally and we internalize. And if you take it personally, you're not going to be able to do anything well.
You've used this term a lot, and you used to use this. I miss these posts, or maybe I'm not getting them, but I miss these posts when you remind us you are right on track.
Right.
So part of this is, I'm hearing we've got to have the ability to stay in our lane. And it's not about looking at, the person in front of you or behind you or in a different lane. And you said it so effectively. Sometimes we're looking at people that have nothing to do with what we're after, right? And stay the track. So touch on the importance of staying in your lane. And I guess more so, how do we stay in our lane? How do we remind ourselves that we are right on track?
Yeah, I think it's really important to fall in love with your process. I mean, I say you are right on schedule, and I believe you're right on schedule if you are trusting your process. if you are patient, if you are positive, if you are consistent in what you believe that you are uniquely called to do. And I was going to get to this later, but we might as well get to it right now. When you talk about consistency, before you can start talking about any sort of consistency, before any sort of consistency can take place, there has to be this convincing that takes place within yourself. Wait a minute, I do deserve to be here. I do add value to this particular lane or topic or content or interest. And it's this convincing of yourself. Then I'll get up and share every stinking morning. I don't care what people think of my ideas, my motivation and inspiration. And it took me a long time to convince myself that I was called to this space. And if you don't do that convincing within, that consistency is never gonna come. You're gonna kick the can along the entire time.
This gets to the self-realization and self-actualization that you are right on schedule, and that needs to be a constant reminder. I joked with my team this morning because we had a few people that couldn't make our stand-up. We have a stand-up meeting every morning for 20 minutes. And a lot of it is just reminding each other that we are right on schedule.
Right.
And in these days when we're all working remotely and we're not able to make those connections physically, it's really, really important to us. And there were a few people that couldn't make it. And I said, you know what, if it were just me on this line, I would have a stand-up with myself. And everybody kind of laughed, right? They were probably thinking like, yeah, he would have a stand-up with himself. But part of that is real. Like you have to have those internal meetings yourself to remind yourself that you are right on schedule. And that allows you then to stay in your lane. Before we get any further, I want to reintroduce Tim Jones, because I know we've got some new folks that are, with us today that haven't seen you on this platform. And I think it's so fitting, Tim, that this is the fourth time that you have joined the Navigating Now platform. And we've only had 22 episodes. And I will tell you, if it were up to me, this would be like your 18th or 19th time where we'd be co-hosting, because this is a demonstration of the consistency that you bring. And it's a demonstration of your willingness to show that consistency. And I want to thank you for that. And I just think it's great. And we talk about consistency with you a lot. And the fact that, every 4 or 5 weeks, especially in a year where everything's changing, I can shoot you a text and say, hey, come on and share your voice, and you do. But for those who maybe haven't tuned in prior, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us what you're up to. Tell us some of the things that you're involved in today.
Yeah, I'm still on this irrational pursuit to leave no potential on the table. And I do that through leading in the city of Chicago around issues that plague Black and brown neighborhoods: education equality, economic development, gun violence, and public safety. I do that through speaking, motivation, and inspiration. And I do that through writing. I write about leadership, inspiration, race, and culture. And again, ultimately, my job is to die empty. All of us were born full and closed. At some point along our journey, we go to university, we go to postgraduate, we open that can up, and then we use our gift, skills, and ability and pour ourselves out on the world. And so that's what I've committed myself to do. Lately, I'm in pivot mode. I pivoted from writing a book to building an app. I decided that I wanted to come to the club, go out to brunch, go to the bathroom, go to work with people. And I didn't think that I could do that with a book. I didn't think a book would allow me to do that. Well, at least at this point in time. So I'm in pivot mode, and I'm writing and working on my first app so that I can sit in between people's Pinterest app and Facebook app, or whatever apps you have on there. I want you to put the Leave No Potential Table app there. And I believe that app will provide individuals with access to my daily motivation and inspiration, as well as a place to interact with other people that share the same visions, values, and virtues that they do. And so, yeah, I want people to use the app to fuel their everyday life on the go. So
that's incredible. I'm sure you've thought about how that app might open up, but it would be cool if there was something that literally popped up and says, "You're right on schedule. Let's get into it." Right? I mean, those reminders are so real. And for those of us who have heard Tim on this platform and other mediums, um, the whole concept of you are born full, and your life's goal is to die empty. I mean, it's just so profound. It has so much meaning. At the same time, I've heard it from you, 20 or 30 times, and you said it and it still had the same impact on me, as if, I really did need to hear it again. So again, tying back to consistency, you talk about your writing. I want to go there for a second, because you've been writing. That's probably the oldest medium, right? For you as a leader has
Right.
been, aside from the in-person and the speaking, it's been writing, right? Before social media, we were all writing.
Right.
And you write very consistently, particularly on LinkedIn, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I write just like I do a motivation and inspiration post every day on my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I do a leadership thought of the day. So a quick
Mm-hmm.
leadership thought of the day for leaders on the go. And it always starts out with "Okay, leaders," and that's intentional. All of the posts start out with "Okay, leaders," because it's
Yep.
a reminder to turn your head from that to the work that you're supposed to do. So it's like, "Okay, leaders, if you're mean, you're average," right? And then I finished with "Leave no potential on the table." But last year I was doing 2 leadership blogs a month. So I have about 60 different leadership blog posts on LinkedIn. I took a break for 2020. I'll be back for 2021 doing 2 leadership blog posts a month. But again, it's just to motivate, inspire, and encourage the leader of today.
Tell us what that consistency in writing on LinkedIn and some of these other platforms prepare, or how it might have prepared you to even think about writing a book.
Mm.
And on the back of that, like, what, as you started to explore writing a book, what was your process there? Because I'll tell you, more and more leaders that I talk to that are out there are really interested in writing a book. And that's why I asked about your history in writing, because you've got such a way with it. You've been doing it for years. So did that inform at all the way that you would structure a book? And if so, what are some of the first few things that you were thinking about? How did you get started?
It's so interesting, Anthony, because I feel like the writing is the foundation, right? I used to write motivational talks and then pivot and put them on a CD over like my favorite hip hop
Right.
instrument.
I remember this. This is how you got started, right?
This is how I got started. I used to just stand outside of the Harold Washington Cultural Center on 47th and King Drive and hand them out. I remember going to all of the streetwear boutiques and saying, "Hey man, can you play this in your shop while people shop?" And the
It
guy
was
said,
like a leadership mixtape, right?
yeah, it was like a motivational mixtape.
Yeah.
And the first one that I did was "Push Back," and that was over a Nas one mic instrumental. The importance of walking your talk is probably my favorite one. I used the Muhammad Ali quote. But anyway, it was just, the writing allows me to pivot from just, it's a content dump. The content dumps turns into CDs. The content dump turns into graduation, 8th grade graduation speeches,
Mm-hmm.
high school graduation speeches, speaking at the United States government, White Castles, Conagra brands. And so the writing is the foundation to all of the other doors of opportunity. But but the writing comes from my commitment to die empty, to get what's in me out of me. Because for so long it was this exercise and suppression, and it was just like, nope, they don't want to hear that. Nope, you're too young to be a life coach. Nope, nobody cares what you think about race and culture in the city of Chicago. And so then I just like, now I have to, it's an exercise in reverse suppression. You're going to get this post. You're going to get my thoughts on the election. You're going to get my thoughts. And it's going to be in a way that you can, it's palatable. It's not mean spirited. It's palatable in my eyes.
It's a different, there's a school of thought out there when you talk about content creation and content production. There's a school of thought that says, document, don't create. And I think you're touching a little bit on maybe the other side of this mentality of just putting your perspective out there and not worrying about it being absolutely perfect. That's the difference between, documenting and creating. Creating is I've got to have this thing and it's got to be perfect before I put it out in the world. And documenting is I'm committing to a process of sharing every step of the way, whether it's, in a thought every morning saying, okay, leaders, or whether it's a book that took you 6 to 12 months. But I think you're touching on the other side of it, because that's, from a business perspective, that makes sense. Consistency, frequency, reach, impressions, right? The analytics of it say, yeah, you've got to be consistent. You've got to put it out there. But I think you're touching on a very personal side of, you call it reverse suppression, almost, kind of turning the nozzle on and untapping your potential and just getting your potential out there.
Well, it's because we are at war with ourselves. Not the right. Guy down the hall. It is this war within myself, where Brene Brown calls these gremlins that we
the shame gremlins,
that we just battle and deal with, to the point where I no longer move forward. I'm stagnant, I'm dormant, and those gifts, skills, and ability lie dormant because of this war that you had within yourself. I'm so glad that Dr. King wasn't worried about an algorithm when he wrote that letter from Birmingham jail, right? Something afflicted him, something caused this holy discontent, and he didn't just sit in that jail and just, on the movies where they just take the can and just, he started writing, and he pushed it out to those ministers. And he let them know how it made him feel. And so that's the importance of reverse suppression. That's the importance of not taking things personally and allowing something to turn into a WEIGHT. It's just
I love that.
We always.
I love that. Yep. I want to come back. We'll come back to the consistency piece. It's so interesting how that is always the thread, right? With you and I, Tim. And for those of you who don't know, Tim and I went to elementary school together several years. We're connected through high school, and then lost touch for 8-10 years post. But it was in those 8 or 10 years that I was able to follow Tim from afar. It was a subset of those 8 or 10 years, 5 or 6 since social media kind of allowed us to follow our community from afar. And I got to see firsthand the consistency that Tim was bringing to the marketplace and to his voice. And it was extremely inspiring. And, last week's guest, Christian Zerone, who is another absolute advocate for consistency before anything, documenting before creating, is he's equally as successful because he's committed to the process and not the end game. He's committed to his lane and not looking left or right. And as I grow as a leader, I'm finding that I want to associate myself more and more with these folks who are committed to the process, regardless of the end point, regardless of what people are doing to the left and the right of them. Let's go into maybe today's topic a little bit. And we're talking about entrepreneurial leadership. And I think the last 20 minutes was a perfect example of the entrepreneurial mindset that it takes to step into your own leadership, not just to start a business or a movement, but to really step into your own and kind of forget the rest. We had you on the show 22 weeks ago, Tim, and I'm just curious, you have a really good perspective from the community here in Chicago to the business community to your network in Northwestern and businesses that you've consulted. Tell us maybe what's different today than it was 22 weeks ago.
I thought that question was so good. You teed that up for me earlier today, but that was such a good question. Nothing much has changed, Anthony. 2020 is still looking for quitters. 2020 is still what I believe that is only for the people and things that are worth your while, right? Because we don't know how long, we don't know what the future holds because of COVID. So we're gonna be going through this for a while.
Yeah.
Why not surround yourself with the people and things that are worth your while? All too often, we take that coffee meeting, we take that phone call, we hang around people that are not worth our while. Now we know we got a while we're gonna be in this. And that small fraction of people are who matter most. Not this large group, like, I have to be at this event, I have to run into such and such. No, you need to be around the folks that are going to be worth your while, and so that you can lock in and build with that individual. And again, for me, not much has changed since 22 weeks ago. I still believe 2020 is not cursed. It's curved. And if you've ever went on a curve, or if you ever ridden on the back of anything and the path curved, you got one responsibility. Hold on. Nothing has changed in 22 weeks. We are still going through this curve all together. You got one job: to hold on. As a business leader, as a dad, as an entrepreneur, especially the challenges that entrepreneurs are going through fiscally, strategically, hold on. Don't tap out. Sorry, I had to do a quick pulpit stunt.
I mean, preach. This is another one of these things that I think we've got to be reminded of every day. That, and you said, well, how did you open it? You said 2020 is still looking for quitters.
It's still looking for quitters. It's still putting pressure on people to tap out, to give up on their dream. Even for me, it was like, I'm just gonna chill. I'm not gonna write. I'm just gonna ride this wave of whatever is going on, because my revenue for speaking has been just decimated. I didn't do any graduations this spring, this summer.
Right.
And I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna chill. And I couldn't allow that pressure to take me out, to allow me to suppress these gifts that I have.
One of the things that I've experienced that might be a little bit different today than it was 22 weeks ago, and I'm experiencing it as a person, as an individual, and as a business leader, is and I guess it's fairly specific and tactical, but we were talking about this the other day about how the reduction in travel and my schedule not forcing me to be between here and San Francisco and back has made my geographic world a lot smaller. Mm-hmm. And so my life now, for the first time in 10 plus years, exists in a 5-block radius. And that has really, really enabled me to open my eyes to what's actually happening, even just in my 5-block radius. Mm-hmm. And I'm very fortunate to live where I do, because I live and work in the heart of the West Loop. And for those of you who are not from Chicago, it's the epicenter of startup and tech here in Chicago. It's also the place of a lot of small businesses and small business leaders who, on a day-to-day basis, are navigating now. We're talking, the owner of the 80-year-old deli, and Nick Rodriguez, who you met right on an episode, who opened a gym and is managing kind of the ebbs and flows of his clientele. Restaurant owners who have been at it for years and years and years and now have to kind of pivot. My world has now been reduced, and my eyes are really open to what's happening around me. And it's invited me to connect with people, leaders in my local community in ways that I don't think I ever would, bouncing between here and O'Hare. And I'm just starting to realize that. And it's what has made Navigating Now great, because we've invited some of these folks and given them voice and platform. And I think that will be a permanent focus of mine moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's reframing, it's recalibrating. Everybody should be doing that, and there's something good on the other end of it, that recalibration. And we talked in your office, one of our last conversations, about re-engineering. There's so much re-engineering that takes place from recalibrating, because of change and the volatility of change in this particular case.
How do you see, when you work with different folks, different leaders, et cetera? I mean, do you see leaders challenging themselves to change? And what are some of the differences you're seeing in leaders as they work with their people? What are you talking to some of your community, your folks, about, how they manage people and how they manage change? Is it more of the same, stay the course? Or are there some certain, tricks or tips that you're offering your leaders and your community to help them see through this?
Yeah, I think everybody is in the intensive care unit right now. So that Steve Jobs mentality, um, Jack Welch, busting people up that are low performers until they become high performers. Or I, I believe that those people are deserved of grace, deserved of professional development, deserving of coaching, deserving of being pulled closer, um,
Mhm.
to correct their behavior, not to be pink slipped, not to be
Mhm.
shamed. Um, Shame is not a leadership development tool. And I wish those strong leaders that I just mentioned understood that. You can't shame anybody into good behavior. You can
Mm.
coach them into good behavior. You can lead by example into good behavior. But this idea of addressing someone through email or in the team meeting, and that's going to increase their
Mm.
productivity and minimize distractions in their work life, it's not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's true today, and it's true really. I mean, anytime, right? But I think today more than ever. The topic today is entrepreneurial leadership, and I'm curious. As you received that topic and you started thinking about it, what is entrepreneurial leadership to you?
Well, I mean, our boy from last week, Christian, could probably be the face of it. The dude, he is what I believe it is: fanatical, irrational. Uh, it's a brand. It's tears from emotion. It's tears of planning.
Mm.
Um, but ultimately, I believe leadership is the ability to move people to action. And entrepreneurial leadership is a lifestyle of moving people to action. And for me, it's the way, you know, I parent. It's the way that I show up in the city of Chicago. It's the way that I learn. It is this everyday commitment to move people to action. First and foremost, doing the work myself. I mentioned this on our shows before. My read, watch, listen list, my mentor, people checking in with mentors, reading schedule, and all that stuff. But ultimately, it's this everyday discipline to move people to action.
Mhm.
And again, it's fanatical, it's irrational, uh, and again, it's just something that is just this ongoing pursuit or this lifestyle
Yeah.
that you sell out to.
Tell us a little bit about. You said, and it's sometimes it's even hard to go back to your one-liners. They're so potent. But you talked about tears of emotion
Mhm.
and tears of planning.
Yeah, I mean, that's that, like, you can still cry about the process while lifting, right?
Mm.
Or while writing, um, or while preparing. It's this idea, like, what is it? It's like it's a religious term where you can be a blessing while bleeding, right? Or
Mm.
just a really good illustration of your car still being able to run although the engine light is on or the oil light pops on. You can still get about 60 miles. Eventually, you're gonna have to get that thing checked out, but you can still get to your destination despite a light being on. And
Mhm.
that's how I see it, man. That tears from emotion, that's gonna happen, right? And then, but what you say every day, build, tears, build. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, I love that. Um, how are you encouraging leaders to support, build up, encourage, put on other leaders? Because I am finding there's a real kind of appetite for that right now.
Yeah.
There's a real need for that right now because all business leaders are experiencing this time in different ways. They're experiencing new aspects of themselves and their business that they never saw before. And I know the ability to connect is real important. How are you, how are you encouraging leaders to kind of connect with each other? And how can we help each other out as leaders?
Oh man, how can we help? I think one of the things that I've been doing for the speakers in my network is just talking about that pivot. What does that pivot look like? One of my good friends started something called a Firsty University, where she wants to help young professionals who are the first in their family to go to college, the first in their family to work in corporate America. And she started writing curriculum because opportunities to speak had slimmed down. And so it's basically just becoming a sounding board and helping people pivot. In the past, it used to be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm not going to share it because I don't want anybody to co-opt my ideas. We talked about that before live. But now it's just like, well, here's how I'm thinking about it. And I'm okay if you co-opt the idea and make it work for your particular lane or area. But I think the sharing of ideas and the collaboration is more transparent, more candid about your journey. Like zero revenue for me in 2020 from speaking, a big difference from 2019, probably my best year of speaking. And so I've been sharing that with folks, and they've been candid with me about what's going on too. And so for me, it's just the foundational things. That's how humanity comes back to humanity. Contact. Now, contact is different in our society today, but increasing the frequency of contact and shrinking the proximity of it. We got to get closer.
And what's on the back of that transparency is the willingness to bring people into your process without being worried about them, stealing your ideas. It's so interesting because I just have noticed over the last 4 or 5 years there has been almost a breaking down of the walls that exist in between even some of our own quote competitors in terms of the ability to again document and show the process and know that other people are going to be building off of it. You talk about entrepreneurial leadership, and I think a lot of people hear entrepreneur and they think you've got to go away and you've got to find something that's just totally different, and you've got to kind of create this and it's got to be yours, and then you've got to release it out to the world and it makes this huge splash and this big impact. I mean, you might be thinking about that, with your app, right? Everybody's got an app,
right.
But how does Tim create something great and differentiated, et cetera? But I think that as leaders and as entrepreneurs, we're learning that we have to learn from each other.
Right.
We talked about Christian last week. I mean, he's a perfect example. I mean, he'll admit none of what he does is different or new. He just does it more consistently, and at times he does it better, and he knows it. And there's so much of what we're doing here at Thought Team that is based on our experience. It's based on what we've seen has worked. And I'll tie this to this local community that I've been able to tap into here over the course of the last 8 to 12 weeks. Small business owners, particularly here in the West Loop, are way more open and willing to share both some of the trades, the tricks of the trades, and also much like you just did so transparently and so authentically, also what they're really struggling with.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship has been built on this idea of toil. And it's really transforming into a toll that I pay my competitor or my peer, right? You do your business at WeWork. It is this toll that you pay of offering your ideas to the person next to you, or listening to the ideas of your neighbor or competitor. It's no longer about toil. It's about the toll that you can pay to continue to get through and go through to your destination. I don't think you got to toil so much to the point of health challenges or loss of relationships. So yeah, I think it's about the toll that you pay. Like who are you pouring into, and who are you allowing to pour into you? That's how you're gonna go further faster, not toil.
That's cool. I love that. Toll, not toil.
Yep.
Another incredible Tim Jones one-liner. We got a question that just came in, and somebody wants to know what your book was all about. Tell us a little bit about your book and kind of how you were approaching it. Maybe some of the topics you were going to touch on.
Well, it was really simple. I mean, I like simple. I'm a man of faith, and so I've kind of grown my faith by daily devotionals, where you get up January 1 and you read a devotional about being disciplined today. Get up, read it, close it,
Right.
and go about my business. So I was just writing a daily motivational, where again, the things that I do now, the content that I've been producing over the past 2, 3, 4 years, dumping it all into a book and calendarizing it, and having themes for certain months and themes for certain times of the year. So it's really simple. It was just this motivation and inspiration. That was one of the books.
I was going to say there's probably more than just one.
Yeah.
What's in the tell-all? That's what I want to know.
Oh, yeah. There's no novels, there's no autobiographies, nothing like that.
Right. And when you think about an app, without, yeah, obviously it's still in kind of proof of concept for you, but I'm just curious, mentally, how do you think about an app? I mean, you said it sits somewhere in between kind of Pinterest and Facebook. Were you talking more so something that people would go to in between the traditional social media platforms? And what's maybe the feeling or the value that you're trying to emote over an app?
Well, phones, I mean, this is my second brain right here.
Right.
I don't go anywhere without her. And all of the content that sits in there. And so that's what I meant, is that hopefully Leave No Potential on the Table app would sit perfectly in between some of your other favorite apps, and that you would click on it and invest in it as much as you invest time on Instagram and all these other places. And so again, it was just this idea of trying to come with people as opposed to writing a book and they read it, leave it on the shelf, leave it.
Yep.
And so I want people to think about the things that I say as often as possible. And if I can get in the most important thing, the most addicting thing in our culture right now, if I can get myself into that, then I can get you.
Yep. I love that. Well, definitely keep us posted, because that's I think it's it's interesting. You don't see too many outside of kind of the Tony Robbins types that have a proprietary mobile app.
Right.
That's pretty cool. And I do know, I mean, you look at the way that even television content has gone over the course of the last 2 or 3 years. Most of it is very a la carte. There's no big AT&T subscription, like there used to be. Like there was one cable provider. People are kind of purchasing content a la carte. And I can imagine that there's an advantage in being able to consume Tim Jones a la carte as opposed to trying to find him in your Twitter or LinkedIn feed.
Totally. And that's what I told, I was working with some of the creators is, someone was saying, well, do you want to just shut down your Instagram and just drive people to the app? I'm like, no, nobody choosing my app over Insta. They're addicted to that. We're going to find a way to integrate my app into everything that's people are consuming right now. It's going to be cool. It's going to be a great app. It's going to be unique. There's not a lot of brothers doing what I do with apps, and so we're going to figure out a way to leverage it and get a market, and it's going to be a great tool.
That's incredible. I want to maybe close out on this ingredient that I know that you and I believe so strongly in when it comes to leadership, in this case, entrepreneurial leadership, and that is consistency. We'll in the spirit of consistency, we're going to start and end with this discussion. And then we've got a question. So we'll touch on this, and then we'll wrap up with any other questions that folks might have. I would argue, and you and I have talked about, when you talk about being an entrepreneurial or an entrepreneur or entrepreneurial leadership, you think your mind immediately goes to what is different, what stands out amongst others. How can I challenge people in new ways? What new ideas do I have? But I would argue, and I think this is the platform that you stand on, that sometimes the most differentiated quality of the best leaders is consistency.
Right.
Because there's not that many leaders out there that show a level of consistency that it takes to make it almost inevitable for people to jump on. And it's something that I work on, right? I mean, it's going to be a lifelong lesson for me is how to maintain a consistency that is so real that other people have no choice, right? Because that's just what you're about and what you demonstrate. So talk to us a little bit about consistency as an ingredient to entrepreneurship.
Oh man, I mean, it's what makes you credible, right? It's what makes you believable. And in my job, when I'm out in the field in the city of Chicago, stumping and advocating for the least of these, my ability to be credible is connected to me adding to the team. It's a game of addition, activism. I'm an activist. It's a game of addition. And so the issues that I show up on consistently, it's connected to me adding to the team and the mission being spread further and faster and easier. And I think that's what you want. It's a game of addition, but until you figure out how to be consistent, nobody's joining the party. Somebody said, if you think you're a leader and you're out there leading and nobody's following you, you're just taking a walk. And I don't want to be out there taking a walk. I want to be moving people to action, and I want to be adding to the team. And I think the only way that you gain that credibility, that ability to be believed, is to hit it hard every day. And the issues that I talk about in the city of Chicago, and I get on my Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and I start typing that message out, I know exactly who I'm talking to. And that's how you become consistent. You have to know who you are, and you have to know exactly who you're talking to. Christian knows exactly who he's talking to when he starts talking about a watch that me and you was like, man, that ain't at Macy's, right? And he's like, no, this ain't. And because he knows exactly who he's talking to. And so he knows how to create the digital campaigns for exactly who he's talking to.
Yep. Yeah, that's in a world where, again, reach and frequency from a data perspective are king. The ability to connect and to know exactly who you're connecting with is a differentiator, and to do it with consistency. We're going to wrap things up here, but I want to let you know that there are a few folks that have submitted some comments, a few privately, just thanking you for your leadership, Tim. One of our fan favorites, Jess, who I know you're connected to, is saying hello. She says, she's always inspired by you, the wisdom that you bring to our community. Jess, thank you for joining. We appreciate your consistency in being a part of our community. Tim, where can people find you? How can people find you? There's just, I know anybody who listens to you wants to tap in. And if you're like me, you want to make sure that as you're scrolling your endless feed of Instagram photos, you stop and read, the messages of being right on schedule. So how can people get in touch with you, Tim?
Yeah, Instagram and Twitter. I am Tim Jones, LLC. I'm on Facebook, Tim Jones. LinkedIn for those leadership thoughts, Timothy Jones. IamTimJones.com, where you can just kind of see a full scope of motivation, inspiration, my advocacy, civic engagement. So I have a footprint out there.
Yep. Well, I want to personally thank you. As we talk about, how can we help each other out as leaders? How many lunches do you go to, or coffees do you go to, that at the end you kind of, give each other a hug, or in this case, a fist bump, and you say, let me know if there's any way that I can help you out. or how can I help you out? We're constantly asking each other that as leaders. And I think one of the wonderful things about being a part of your community, being connected to you, is like, you don't have to ask that question of me, and I don't have to ask that question of you, because I know it's just simply showing up with consistency.
Right.
The day that I call you and say, hey, Tim, how can I help you out, is the day that I don't see you in my LinkedIn feed and on Instagram doing your thing. Because I know that there's an exchange here, and it's very equal. And that is, that I'm going to show up for you and tapping into our community and putting our voice out there and sharing our voice and building a platform. And we know that we can tap into you for the consistency in your voice and the community that you're building. It's demonstrating leadership. That's all I ask. So right. I want to thank you, Tim, for providing that to us so consistently. And again, want to thank you for stepping into this discussion as regularly as you do. And I know that this will not be the last time.
No, I hope not. And I have one parting shot besides thanking you,
please,
and the entire Thought Team family. One of the things about entrepreneurial leadership and leadership in general is this idea of ownership. Again, just this fanatic, irrational idea that I own this thing. And here's a crazy thought. Dogs believe that if they pee on it, they own it. In this journey that we're on as leaders, we have to pee on it. Our pee is prey, right? I'm a man of faith, and I believe that if I pee on it, I own the situation and it doesn't own me. And that's what we got to focus on, is owning the situation. And you can only do that by peeing on it.
Tim, I mean, it takes one to know one. I appreciate you using our platform to pilot different messaging because that one hit a little different.
Yeah, I've been waiting all day to do that.
I mean, how do you wrap up after that parting shot? That's hilarious. It's also a t-shirt, I feel like, at some point. It's very real. Tim, thank you very much. I appreciate all of your anecdotes, however abstract. We want to share with everybody that we are here every week consistently to bring these discussions to you all, our community, our clients, our friends, and our family. We want to thank Tim for stepping in today. He's such an incredible part of our community and our voice. Next week, we have another very special member of our community in Chuck Pearson. He's going to be talking to us about his journey to becoming a lifelong learner, and he's going to be doing it through sharing a bit of his cancer journey, which is an incredibly inspiring story. And we've got Chris Holtmans towards the end of the month talking about how our sales environment has shifted to really focus on more of a service-driven model. So a lot of different topics. The common thread here are just great leaders. And Tim, you're on the top of the list, and we again really appreciate your time. So for those of you who want to register for some of these upcoming talks, we broadcast live every Thursday at 3 o'clock. ThoughtTeam.com/live is where you can learn about our schedule and also register to join these talks, or you can just watch us live. We appreciate everybody joining, and we look forward to bringing you these topics and more on an episode by episode basis. Everybody have a good rest of the week.